Provided in part by Cabbage, who has helped thousands of restaurants access the financing they need. Apply online for a line of credit of up to $250,000. Learn more at cabbage.com/foodable.
All right, so hello and welcome to this Feeding the Future podcast live at Foodable I.O. 2018 in Chicago. I'm Paul Barron, and in this episode we'll be discussing initiatives to clean label, plant-based product development, localization, and the next era business strategies that can provide solutions to a new breed of food service professional we're seeing today. With me today, I've got Mr. Brad Kirk, Senior Vice President, National Accounts at Lyons Magnus. So, Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be here.
Nice. I like this whole scene we've got going on here. It's a very intimate feeling.
Yeah, we're comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And then also Kristen Bird, VP of Foodservice Poultry Marketing at Tyson. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Absolutely. All right, so guys, we're going to just get kind of into the whole process. So the topic of today is food service at the chef's table. And what we have seen, of course, on Foodable is kind of this evolution of where the industry is moving. And this has been from an independent operator, chefs, and also emerging brands that really are kind of dictating and driving the space. Both of you and your respective companies are doing some pretty amazing things. So we're going to get into that. And I want to talk about kind of this new age operator and where they are today. And let's just, in general, what each of your companies are doing to address that. So first up, Brad, Lyons Magnus, let's talk about what you guys are doing to address the new age operator.
Thanks, Paul. Well, first, we've created a platform of products that appeals to them because they're user-friendly, they're natural, clean. We've removed things that set artificial wherever we can.
Yeah.
So we've tried to appeal with them with a slate of products and categories that are centric to us. And we're working to make them readily available with an online presence. So it's the route to market and the type of products that we present and the creative concepts that come from our products.
Yeah.
They have to know what to do with it.
Sure.
And so we're working hard to make sure that that's relevant for them in this day and age, and the way they like to look for the goods has changed quite a bit from 3 decades ago when I joined Lyons. So it's quite a shift to address a new generation.
Yeah, and you guys, of course, are a champion of clean label as a company movement. Do you see that when you look at the industry landscape, do you feel like that's kind of table stakes today for all manufacturers?
I do. We're fortunate at Lyons. We have a great heritage because we were owned by a family that's a very prominent farming family, selling produce, fruits, to wholesale retailers. And so that simplicity was always in our core. But yeah, we made things that had long shelf lives and could travel great distances. But it was in our heart and core to make sure that our products could be simple as possible. So I think we've sort of come back around as a production company. So yeah, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
It's been in our culture. But we move with the times and today's needs. We're doing our best to meet them with fruit, juice, flavoring-based products.
Well, everything old is new again. I was born and raised in a farm, and I had a chance to see my grandmother and my grandfather raise cattle and hogs and wheat, and it was a real farming community. And she had a restaurant, and I like to refer to her. She was doing farm to table back then. Why aren't we doing more of this today? So you're right. I think we are seeing this evolution and this shift. Kristen, let's talk a little bit about where Tyson is today, because you guys are really shaking the trees right now, doing a lot of new cool things. Tell us a little bit about what's happening at Tyson.
Yeah, sure. And it's actually really consistent and similar to what Brad shared also, in that a big push for us on the restaurant side of the business with poultry is the exact same thing. Really all natural, clean label to an extent with no antibiotics ever in our poultry. But the real push or interest that we've seen from operators is that desire for fewer artificial ingredients, if any, all natural. So in our school portfolio, everything is all natural and nothing added. We've launched a portion of our portfolio that's no antibiotics ever, so that the chickens are raised with no antibiotics ever. And all natural continues to be one of the lead claims. For poultry, we can't necessarily say, or we can't state clean label, but that intent behind clean label, as far as really wanting cleaner labels and using whether it's herbs or vinegars as far as preservatives, that desire is really there. So the big effort for us from a poultry perspective with restaurants has been very much no antibiotics ever, and the desire for all natural, and continuing to clean up the ingredient label, even though we can't necessarily state that on the label.
Well, let's kind of reference this evolution, because we are seeing something that is somewhat, I will call it industry changing, and that is this really big shift, from we'll call it chefs, millennials, new age operators, whatever it is. But I want to get your take on how manufacturers are looking at this shift occurring in front of you, and what are some of the things that you're doing to prepare for that movement? Because we probably have maybe another decade before we see a landslide movement, incrementally really shift what we're seeing in food service. Lyons Magnus, let's talk about how do you see the next 10 years dealing with that evolution of new operator?
We were fortunate because we were embedded in the menus of some of the largest brands in America.
Yep.
They had a stake with their guests, and they would come to us originally and say, we love what you can create with us, but we need it to at least be naturally colored. And we said, okay, here's a great sustainable solution for that. And then we wanted to move to naturally flavored. We created a good sustainable solution for that. And with each one of these elements of clean, because we realized that we needed to approach clean as the guests were requesting it. So some sets of guests were only concerned if something said artificial.
Right.
Others didn't want some corn-based sweeteners.
Okay.
Others wanted something else. So we started creating a family of products that met those different needs, and pretty soon we had quite a broad portfolio.
Okay.
And now we've moved into the world of natural preservatives. So pretty soon we could still create a product that was recognized as a Lyons great creation, but it fit all of these clean elements. Where I feel like it'll go in the future is it will continue. 85% of all our current R&D space is devoted to cleaning up something or creating something else with simpler levels of ingredients. So will it continue? Absolutely. Will it become the main stage for Lyons? Without a doubt. We see the next decade taking us into a greater library of products that are available, broad line, that will be clean, and all the elements that we get credit for.
So for you, it's really kind of this transition of your corporate product culture. It's you're taking it as consumers are making the demand, but also as operators are also requesting it. And when you look at that demand as it starts to develop up the chain of, say, over the next decade, are there any specific things that you feel like, hey, in 5 years we have to be here, in 10 years we have to be here on that? Anything on the Lyons roadmap?
We do. Okay, that's a great question. So there is a timetable for development. So what you really have to do as producers like us is we have to work with our suppliers, because we're moving things, and when we try components, because a good from Lyons has got several elements in the formula, so we have to have components that work through the process of Lyons, meaning the manufacturing. So we end up with a finished good that the restaurateur can use, whatever the entity is that will use our product. So it's mapped out over time, and we're engaging our suppliers.
Right.
So they're in this with us to help us practice and prepare and deliver goods that meet the needs of the current chefs. That's really where we're at. It is a process across time, and we're grateful that we feel like we're quite a bit forward.
Yeah.
But we still have quite a bit of opportunity to go, because different ingredients react different ways to different processes.
Sure.
So we're working, experimenting with all of those so that we can build out our family of products.
Nice.
That's the Lyons answer.
Kristen, when obviously Tyson is doing some pretty amazing things, how are you guys kind of addressing this new age operator? What's the roadmap for you?
Yeah, and this actually builds on something I wanted to say to the earlier question too, as far as what operators are looking for, and it's really information. So there's such a wide variety of needs that various operators have. So a big push for us has been sharing and being transparent as much as possible with the ingredient decks, the claims, the needs that people are looking for. So that sounds easy, but traditionally getting the amount of information that now operators want and consumers want, what they'll continue to want going forward, it's a little different than what we've been used to doing, because the key challenge is how do you make that readily available and accessible to them?
Right.
Fortunately, we can rely on external websites, editorials, things like that, but it's really providing much more information than we've traditionally been asked to provide in the past.
So kind of transparency in essence?
Detailed ingredients, transparency, education. So a big part of it is education. It's become a lot more complex, even just with all of the opinions out there on what's good, what's not good. So we really feel like operators and consumers are looking for that subject matter expertise, whether it's operational, how it delivers, satisfying the end consumer's various nutritional needs, what's good, what's not good, different quality levers. So for us, for a food service manufacturer, it's really getting that information in the hands of the operators or making it available to them as they seek it. Fortunately, with everything digital enablement, the last 5 years especially, we're better able to do that and to communicate directly to operators, or at least have the information there when they want to go find it. So that, I think, has been the big change internally, in the sense that the expectation is that much higher to provide me expertise on how I can best use the product, what the best forms of your product I should be using, but even then just the nutritional, the claims, the detail, what's good, what's bad, what's the difference between, like for poultry, a raising claim versus a performance claim. So that, I think, has been the big thing that we'll continue to see more of going forward, that we want to really get all of that information in the hands of operators, or arm them in a way so that they can seek that out and find it. So that's going to continue in the next 10 years.
Do you find that challenge is formidable when the operators themselves are shifting the landscape in which they consume content? So much like what we're doing here, we're doing on a podcast. Okay, this is going to hit iTunes and Google Play. This would not normally be a place that you would communicate to food service operators in the past.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly a perfect case in point. So it's like using various forms where the operators can seek it out to be communicating the information, or at least making it clear where they can find the information.
Yeah. So
in education, food can be hard now. Food can be pretty complex.
Well, especially because now you're dealing with a whole new operator set that is so much more knowledgeable. And then you amp that with a consumer that's almost as knowledgeable as the operator.
Yeah.
So you're getting doubled down on the industry now. So
and the need.
Exactly. So the need's there, the demand's there, and you can't whitewash them. You can't tell them, you can't bamboozle them. You've got to come out with the real deal. So,
and there's a variety of needs, whether it's price point, premium value, what people are willing to pay, which nutritional things they're looking for. So it's putting that in the arms so that operators can access that information to make an informed choice.
Very cool. All right, so I'm going to ask each of you a point question relative that I think would work for each of your organizations. We'll talk plant-based on Lyons Magnus. Where do you see plant-based going?
I don't have a scale to measure it on, Paul, but the world is so dynamic. It's not static any longer.
What's the feel?
My feel is absolute. If I could, I sense that it's important because of the way I cook at home.
Okay.
So I'm past the millennial age. I'm a baby boomer. And yet I've transitioned. My wife and I, the way we prepare food and what we use to go in it, I sense that it's got real credibility. Mm-hmm. So all of us are going to examine what that means to us. Lyons is a fruit-based company anyway, so we come from the ground.
Sure.
So we look at it probably a bit different than someone who's a key protein provider. Mm-hmm. But I sense that in the dynamic world we live in, it is a message that's going to continue to be amplified, and the consumers are asking. At least that's what I view.
Yeah.
But it's not the heart of my world as a ground-based fruit and flavoring-based, liquid products company.
Yeah.
It's just our sense. And as we speak with our customers, which are the best of class, they're representing their guests, and they're clearly echoing it. So
right.
I sense that it's here and going to grow.
The surge is on.
Yeah, the surge is on.
Yeah.
It's going to be amplified.
I like that.
Plant-based, drilling down even further with plant-based protein, it's definitely going to be here this day. It's just the reality of growth in the sense that not only are we seeing it from a consumer perspective, that people want that in their diets, vegetarian, flexitarian, but it's just the need that the environment is driving this trend. Like truly, we all read and see about it and hear about it regularly. We're going to go from 7 billion in population to over 9 billion by 2050, with the bulk of that happening in the short term.
How do you sustain?
Exactly. There's the only way to really sustain that, and there's a broad craving that will continue to accelerate. Animal-based protein has continued to accelerate with the continued emergence of the middle class.
Right.
So as the population continues to grow, the reality it would be very difficult to support that with animal-based protein. So it's got to be plant-based protein as an additional option.
Yeah.
The need, as we look at the population growth, we're going to need 60% more animal-producing protein to do milk, eggs, and
cheese.
meat.
Yep, absolutely.
So the reality is we're going to need plant-based protein to supplement the population. And so a lot of it's the consumer desire for it, but a lot of it is, I think, that awareness that it's going to be what's needed to support the globe to produce that in a sustainable way, which is why we link it so closely to sustainability, because we need to sustainably produce both animal protein and plant-based protein.
That's a pretty amazing statement coming from Tyson.
Yeah.
So you guys are really looking at the vision of the future as...
We're a protein company.
Yeah.
So as part of that, it's animal-based protein and exploring other options, too, that fit with our abilities to supply protein.
Sure. And as you activate some of these countries that have not had the chance to go to middle-class, models of eating, which is going to create a heavier demand on true protein, whether it's chicken or beef or whatever, you are going to see not only the influx of, before the population gets there, just the influx of, economically the demand that can be there worldwide, where it's been mostly, Western Europe and America and North America.
Yes,
the more modern
absolutely.
countries, yeah. So huge.
And it's that continued balance, like animal protein, wonderful. That balance and mixture of it with plant-based and even plant-based proteins, like it's a variety of options that are just good to produce both those sustainably is what's so important.
All right, so let's, the title of this episode here today is Food Service at the Chef's Table. Let's talk about that. And that is the process in which a chef or an independent operator starts to do selection of products. Now, in the past, it's been somewhat driven by distribution. Some of it has been driven by, consumer demand and need. Where do you see that in the future in terms of how the ecosystem is going to handle this fragmentation that we've seen occur in the last few years? We'll kind of open that up to each of you.
That's a complex question.
It is.
So the distribution channel is addressing it just the same. They're at a table just like this discussing the exact same thing. They have to open up broad enough to a supply that embraces the issues at hand. They won't sit stagnant.
Yeah.
Because they can't.
They've got to.
Because their whole...
The demand is too much.
Exactly, yeah. The model depends on an increasing pace of change. but I'm not in that distribution market. I just look closely at them because they're our partner to help us get to market.
Right.
I don't know if Kristen has a vision of what will happen over time, but without question, they will change and adapt to meet the needs.
So we've seen a kind of a bit of a shift there, especially in some of the data and studies that we've done on with Foodable Labs, is that there is an element or a surge of unique local sourcing that is occurring in very unique ways, all the way down to just going to Costco or even Walmart, which is the largest organic supplier now. So when you look at that as a landscape of potential points of where independent operators and new age chefs can go, what is the future there for, I know Tyson is doing a lot of unique things in terms of distribution. Can you talk about that?
Well, distribution-wise, it's more making the products readily available wherever an operator or consumer would want to shop. So the channels are absolutely becoming blurred. So cash and carry and club stores and traditional distribution. So we satisfy all areas of distribution. There's online components, e-commerce
Amazon
components, absolutely. So it's very much acknowledging and partnering and recognizing how the channels are blurring and trying to be ahead of that as far as making sure that we're looking at potential partners where we could explore future distribution. So it's dynamic. I'd say on the food service side and the restaurant side, the biggest thing still continues to be cash and carry.
Yeah.
Like in the fact that especially smaller operators want that autonomy or freedom to be able to control the order of purchase. So right across the board, we want to satisfy the operator and consumer's needs across all channels, and I think we'll continue to see things through e-commerce as well.
Yeah.
That's also probably why the major players in distribution have addressed that themselves. In other words, they watched someone else start and be successful because the user needed to access product in a different way. So they've also changed, and they are changing. They're all live with a change, which is good for the overall route to market. Again, it's not a static world any longer. If it was for a while, that's gone.
That's gone and it's done.
We're not talking about it. We're living in it now, Paul.
It's going to continue to be dynamic because there are more options, so people can shop them. It's more, especially at a small scale, it's hard to do as you get any scale or become a larger operator.
Right. Let's talk trends. And the idea behind trends is there's a lot of trend spotters in the industry, seeing things happen, kind of the evolution of the space. If you look back 2 decades ago, fast casual hits the stream. Consumer diets completely shift. The model of delivery changes. QSR is now challenged. There's a mid space. All these things have happened in the last 2 decades. So if we look at just 1 decade moving forward, when you insert social media, you insert new media and distribution, you insert all this knowledge and education, where do you see this going? How do you attack that future?
I think is to continue to be really agile and nimble. Like take
I like that. Yep.
It's just required at the pace. Like right now, what we generally talk about, the trends, like one day, plant-based even 6 months ago was just emerging.
That's a very good point.
And even today, leaving the National Restaurant Association show this weekend, plant-based was the headline everywhere. Like just the acceleration of the trends is happening so quickly. Like it almost gets noisier before there's scale.
Right.
Like it's going to be a trend, but it's almost like as it's even just scaling and becoming sizable, it's almost entrenched already.
That's a great observation too, because we've seen that in other areas of the industry, whether it's spirits or beverage or even brand development, is that noise kind of gets at a fever pitch before there is scale capability. So that's a cool observation. What do you see in that 10-year trend, though, moving forward?
Well, I think the big trend, we've been hearing it already, but I think it's going to be one that really is backed by just out of absolute necessity, especially in urban centers, is food waste.
All right.
So we've been talking about it for a while. It's definitely a bigger topic overseas. It's even gotten a lot more airtime this past year domestically, but just the reality, especially with independent operators in urban centers, I think food waste is going to continue to be a huge challenge, huge costly challenge, and just operators really wanting to be socially responsible and taking a leadership position in that. Like, we hear and see the best views on how to approach it now coming from the independent restaurant operators, from the spirit of just wanting to do what's right.
Absolutely. Brad, okay, so fruit-based Lyons Magnus, obviously fruit infusions, we're seeing introduction of new flavors, all sorts of things in terms of variety also coming across in terms of trends in the beverage market. How and what do you see moving in that direction in terms of trends?
Everything that you just described, Paul. A trend is really, it began with a great idea, and someone with enough scale adapted to it, took it on. And then everybody else wants to copy.
Sure.
So now we have a full-blown trend. So what we're seeing in the beverage space especially, which is something that we support in a great way, is the creative elements of flavor combinations into different type of beverage platforms.
Yeah.
So whether it's with or with alcohol, or whether it's a lunch consumption beverage, a breakfast beverage, the combinations of heat or sweet or salt and the flavor names have become more and more prevalent, and they're displayed sort of in old ways where people can see it, grab it, create their own. My personal view is that this will continue. This is now a trend. Not just a flavor combination is a trend, but the flavor combinations and the sophistication of what the consumer wants. They want something that's authentic, that they can experiment with, play with. So they like it when they can reach out and get something that's very creative, as if they were to have built it on their own, but they didn't have to build it on their own. It was available wherever they purchase food or drink. So most definitely that creation is a trend.
Yeah.
Flavors, there are people that model those, and we can see where the flavor combinations are moving across the trend line. But most definitely, everybody in our world wants something that looks and feels handcrafted, whether or not they want to handcraft
that's
it
a
or
good
not.
point. All right, so you both are part of the IFMA group, which is the International Foodservice Manufacturers Association, and let's talk about what they're doing, trying to solve these bigger picture ideas and challenges that the food service manufacturers are facing, this landslide shift of the tide. What are some of the things that the association, both of you I know are part of it, are doing? Kristen, we'll pick it up with you.
There's a lot of work happening as far as industry-wide research studies that IFMA is leading on, both consumer research, what consumers are looking for going forward, so pooling all the resources of IFMA to really dig into that, as well as operators and new go-to-market dynamics as far as the distributor dynamic, just distribution overall. So those three pillars are really big dig sites that we'll be sharing more with the industry going forward into this next year. So those are great areas as far as every trend really we've talked on. We're trying to answer through some of that research that the IFMA.
Well, it's interesting that you're hitting on 2 points: the consumer side of it in terms of how the operators are dealing with that, but also the go-to-market strategy, which is, in essence, the storytelling aspect, the package, everything that can come around that.
It all matters. So it's the consumer path to purchase, the operator's path to purchase, and then how it all comes together in the go-to-market.
So what you're seeing, Paul, is what she's describing is what IFMA does best. There's, just like anything else, there's noise at first in the world. We look what created that trend. It's because it's spoken about.
Sure.
But at IFMA, we gather together the best of class minds. That's the association. And we implement things that we can use for our members.
Yep.
It's an association of the best of class manufacturers. We want everyone in because we need their brain trust.
Right.
So what IFMA is doing is not just talking about it, but we're creating a dynamic model for all of our membership to share.
Yeah.
And to me, it's about execution. There's a lot of great ideas, but what did we do?
Yeah, sure.
And so we're really active, and I think that this model that will be shown to the world this fall is a great example of executed action.
Right.
And it's very relevant today because you've got the best of class people within the IFMA organization with the manufacturers that create the association building products to help us elevate our game and respond to the guests and consumers that we serve.
We obviously work with IFMA, and one thing that has really impressed me is the fact that they're able to get like-minded minds that are potentially competitors and bring them to a unification of vision, going forward.
The barriers are gone when the objective is all the same.
Yep.
How do we serve food and drink? Deliver it the right way at the right time and
Sure.
the right. So there's no barrier there.
Yeah.
There's no boundary to the right action. So at IFMA, we remove all of those boundaries because we all have the same objective.
Yeah.
We want to serve food and drink, make it available at the right place, at the right time, in the right way,
Yep.
so that the consumable part happens.
Very cool.
It moves the whole industry forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, it's been great having you guys here on the podcast today. Thank you so much for your time. I know you guys are very busy this week, so taking an extra 30 minutes out has very been special.
Oh, thank you. It was a nice opportunity. It was nice to chat.
Yep. And Brad, thank you.
Great to have been here with two of the best, and please everyone get to the show.
Yeah.
Walk the show floor and see what's new and what's happening. You'll be excited that you engaged.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
For all of our listeners out there that are tuning in, of course, you can catch this podcast and many more like it on our channels, both on foodabletv.com and also on iTunes or Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll be able to catch these I.O. Talks and many more pieces of content coming from Foodable Network. We'll catch you on the next time, and see you later.